Well, welcome to all. We have, as you will notice, we've not just Pat McCart, but we have another man from across the Atlantic, a very distinguished visitor, and thank you for coming to talk to us, Brian. This is Brian McCabe, who's a former detective commander in the NYPD, no less, and a prominent figure in the Irish American community in New York and I suppose in the States generally. So, welcome, Brian, and thank you for agreeing to this interview. Pat and myself are interested in finding out, what are the perspectives on things from your side of the water? For example, let's start with the president. How is Joe Biden, who is so emphatically Irish, how is he viewed by the Irish American community?
Well, thank you for inviting me, Jude. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and Pat as well. Um, well, we could spend a lot of time on that question alone. Joe Biden is a wonderful man, and from a perspective of Irish issues, he always has been. The question is not about Biden's commitment to progressive Irish issues. I think you hit the nail on the head by saying, what is the view of the Irish American community about the president? And as you know, it's comforting in a way to see the dysfunction in Westminster, because it distracts me momentarily from the incredible polarization that we've experienced here as well. And that actually is something that's defined by the attitudes of the broader Irish American community. We aren't the monolithic political community we once were, meaning that we generally shared the Irish American political power, for the most part in 20th century America, would have been based on the particular Irish Catholic immigrant tradition, working class people, ethnic identity, faith identity, but also working class in the urban areas. The Irish American community, to a degree, from that Irish perspective, and really perhaps maintaining that clear connection and a clear understanding, the Irish American reality, to a degree, has been hampered by its own success. As Irish America, you were going to ask?
I was going to say, well, yes, go ahead with talking about the degree to which.
Brian, why do you say it's hampered by its own success? What do you mean by that?
Well, on the one hand, it's been very, very, very helpful that people have risen and totally assimilated into an American identity. That assimilation, the idea of a hyphenated Irish America or American Irish, is something that I and my family, who all at the end of the day I could speak for, are still very much in tune with. Yeah. We have Irish immigrant blood in our family through multi-generations, but we're here. One side of my family are on Baltimore refugees, the veterans of the American Civil War, who maintained this Irish identity and affinity for their traditional culture. But and also we were treated, and this needs to be, from my perspective, once again, it needs to be remembered by people who share my tradition and history, that we were once treated as the outsiders. We were treated with total disregard, disdain, disrespect.
Why was that, Brian? Why was that? Was that the fault of any particular community, or why?
It was the Catholicism, I think, more than anything else, that made us the outsiders. You see that, for instance, there's 40 plus million people in this country who can claim and do claim an Irish heritage. Now that includes those who would be from a Protestant faith tradition, the Scots-Irish, as they were called, pioneers and such. But of those 40 odd million, many of us have succeeded to the point of assimilation that it's almost, as much as I have a great deal of how I am very resistant, and I need to point out through organizations, whether it's the Ancient Order of Hibernians or throughout community groups and everything, the importance of maintaining a true connection with Ireland, with our history, and with what's going on currently, rather than just paying lip service to a paddywhackery type of thing. Perhaps every March 17th they'll celebrate something or play stereotypical roles without really being connected.
Brian, can I ask you what you're
Yeah.
right? You're saying that basically your family goes back to the famine and so on in America and so on.
Yeah.
Why is it important, like to a guy like you? Here we are in 2022. Why is this Irish thing? And like it's always fascinated me why people maybe third and fourth generation, and I've met them, and they are seriously proud and so on, and it means a lot to them emotionally. But what's the tie? I can never, and not that I can't get it, but what's the explanation for it?
Okay, that's a great question, Pat, and something that I ponder, and people who I associate with ponder as well. It's once again, you look at that 44 million number, and the great majority of them go about their days as Americans. They even if they have a very stereotypical Irish sounding name, they may not really have any understanding of history, and sadly, unfortunately, here the education, historical education, is lacking as well, even for here home in America. The reason that I was saying that it's very important that we hearken back to those days when we were the outsiders, when we were the first massive immigrant group to this country, and now to see that there might be some people who share my heritage, they forget. And they forget exactly the situation that they have been in. And therefore, they have less empathy for people who are struggling today. The Irish experience in the United States of America, from my perspective and people who share my views, is informed by that. And therefore, rather than be manipulated into an us against them type situation, we should be able to know, to see the shared humanity in other people who've come along, and that's basically how most of the people who I associate with deal with the issues of immigration in this country now. If you forget where you come from, then you just become part of this amorphous mass of people who are just chasing the buck, and you
cultural amnesia.
Yeah, you need to have a touchstone. And for us, that touchstone is our Celtic Irish heritage that we share with many people. And even here, I've found, particularly in the last, say, 40, 50 years, a resurgence in that pride that's directly related to what was still occurring in the 6 counties.
Okay, so how of the Irish Americans that you know, Brian, how would they view Joe Biden? Would they be proud of Joe Biden having achieved what he has? Would they be disappointed? Do they feel he could have done more or do more?
We're always looking for more to be done. It's very important that at least the administration, for as long as it lasts, that it stays focused on Irish issues, and it does try at this opportune moment in our collective history to hold the British to task to make sure Good Friday is recognized. We are honest brokers in that agreement. They can't just rip it up. It's a treaty. It's an international treaty. So, and Biden, despite whatever he may be perceived as at home here, whether it's due to crime rates rising or inflation or any of the other things he's dealing with, from an Irish American perspective, Biden is much more so than a prior administration, and even much more so than the Obama administration, in which he was the vice president, is much more focused, and it might be the Times themselves, on making sure that the Irish position vis-a-vis Brexit, vis-a-vis ultimate reunification, that the focus stay on that, so that there's an understanding that the American government, to whatever degree our advocacy can keep them focused on that, will remain focused. We do not have the monolithic political power that we once had, but still we have considerable power. And one of the interesting things about it is, even if some people might have gone off the reservation as far as remembering where they came from and Catholic social justice and believing in, the underdog and the trade unions and all, even if they've kind of gone off that and they're getting much more complacent in a consumer type of, one thing that I found, that even with people who I might disagree with domestically, politically, they might have drifted more to the right, or be associating with is that when it comes to Ireland, you'll find very few people who claim an Irish American heritage of seeing anything but the eventual reunification of the country. As it's just, everybody agrees it's just such an obvious thing, and always has been. The question is not when will it come, but why has it been delayed so long?
Would that include, sorry to interrupt, but would that include people like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and the right wingers that you've sort of hinted at there? Do they actually? I've never heard any of them expressing a view on Ireland. Actually, they seem to be completely immersed in American politics.
Yeah, they won't. And look, I don't consider them. Well, Bill O'Reilly, he's history for all intents and purposes. Hannity, they're entertainers. Let's face it; these people do not speak to the whether it's on Fox News or, for that matter, Larry Donnelly on MSNBC, who's a strong Irish American voice from Boston. Generally, they don't address the issues in Ireland. It's done much more community based. So I think the likes of O'Reilly and Hannity, they just succeeded in this, in what passes as objective journalism, but is not, but is strictly a matter of agenda-driven talking head. So that's one of those conversations they would prefer not to have, because it's all wound up, their right-wing politics might be too involved with the idea of a special relationship, but they prefer not to deal with it, because then they would reveal themselves to be Irish, who would not be in line with most Irish American thinking.
Have they sort of disowned? Have they sort of disowned? Sorry, Pat, were you going to say something?
No, just you used that great expression, which I love. They went off the reservation. Have a lot of Irish gone off the reservation? I was watching some time there back coverage of Trump, and it seemed a lot of the old Irish have shifted way to the right, and I think you have actually acknowledged that. Is that in the circles you move? Is that true, or am I just imagining that?
Not in the circles. Not in the circles that I move. However, professionally, Irish American police officers, I've known a lot of them to they hold their nose when it comes to Trump, but they say at least he's speaking to our concerns. Now, when the argument is made that he's not, he cares nothing about you and he's merely exploiting those concerns.
Yeah.
There's a sense that nobody else is addressing our history and they feel that they have been marginalized and put upon. So that's one issue. Others who are involved in the corporate world or in the financial markets, they may very well be supportive of the right, simply because from the capitalist perspective of it. But as I said, once again, yeah, there has been, and it's been documented, there has been a shift to the right since the Reagan years. And I think what happens is they exploit that yearning for an identification, and they'll talk about Ballyporeen, but at the end of the day, there's nothing effective happening. It was only during the Clinton administration that America truly engaged in making change, in facilitating change. Back when the civil rights movement started, inspired by the civil rights movement here, the Americans kind of backed off. The American government, middle of the Cold War, British special relationship, British telling us, how dare you lecture us about civil rights in the North when you're still having your own house sorted out. Yeah. And a lot of people went that way. So
you were over in sorry, Pat, I'm hogging this, but
no, go ahead.
You were over, Brian, at the meeting of the Ireland's Future in Dublin a few months ago now, I think. What was it that did it mean so much to you? I mean, to our shame, neither Pat nor myself were there. Did you come specifically for that, and what are your hopes and dreams for what might come out of it eventually?
I did. I did come specifically for it, and I'm assisting to whatever degree I can in facilitating that movement here in the New York area. I myself and my lovely wife Joan, we traveled for the first time in 20 years without the kids. We went to Ireland together. But it was a friend of ours, Damien Dempsey. He and his brother came here and visited us for 6 days. Then we all went back to Dublin together, and Damien joined us at the Ireland's Future event. But I did go back specifically to be there at 3 Arena for that event. And
Were you impressed? Were you impressed?
I was impressed with so many people finally revealing that, you know, all the while they were for a united Ireland. There was, I believe it's very important that at this particular time, with the disorder and dysfunction in Westminster, with the potential issues of violence creeping up once again because of the hardening of a border, I think we are in very good shape because of young people on both sides of the traditional lines deciding that this is no longer for us, that we live on this island and perhaps this is our future. I think that it's a historical inevitability. I always have, and I see this as an opportunity perhaps to jumpstart it, to get it going, because we, from a Republican perspective, or a little bit further nationalist perspective, of course that is the ultimate goal, is a reunification of the nation. But the Ireland's Future event that I was most heartened by was, I was being a little facetious there before, but you had Fianna Fáil, you had Fine Gael, you had people from the different faith communities and people representing it, and they're all speaking about a post-united Ireland. I think that's a good thing, because ultimately we're going to all have to, or you will all have to live together and sort that out. But I think here in America, anything we can do to facilitate the reunification of the country is
Brian, can I ask you, like, I'm following on from Jude's question. Myself and Jude could possibly have gone to that thing, but one day I thought, this is a Saturday, Dublin traffic, finding accommodation and all the rest of it. And yet you came all the way from New York. And you know, that sense of identity thing you mentioned earlier on, what motivates an American, all right, be it Irish American, to do something me and Jude couldn't be motivated to do?
Well, you live a reality every day, and the good work that you guys do, it was not a matter of you couldn't go to this particular event. It was the inaugural one in Dublin, and there'll be more. I think there's something coming up in Belfast very soon. And I'd be concerned about that, because as these gatherings take place and they start getting some traction, that perhaps there would be some type of reaction to that. But so it'll be going on, and it'll continue. So it's focusing people, particularly people who would not traditionally have been supportive of a united Ireland. Now, and there were other. I was with a great couple. We had a great time with from Philadelphia, Brian McDonald and his wife Laura. They were, and I didn't meet them until I was introduced to them in Dublin. But they also were there specifically for the Ireland's Future. We have a vested interest in Ireland's future and the Irish American perspective. And as I said, I speak for myself. I speak generally for my family. We share it. But even across the board, people who might have different political domestic views, everybody thinks that I've spoken to. It's a non-starter. Of course, Ireland should be united. How do we get there? And we need to get there by convincing people who would have been that would be the last thing that they thought would be a good thing, to understand that it's an inevitability. And how do we carve out our participation in a post-reunified Ireland? So I think that's the benefit of Ireland's future.
Yeah.
The thing I'm going to ask you is a hard question. How long do you think we need to work at setting up ideas, citizens' assemblies, conversations, planning for United Ireland before we go to a border poll? Is it 10 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 15?
I
I heard
wouldn't
somebody
know.
today talking about 25 years.
No, you see, I kind of twigged to that at the meeting, and I kind of got from certain parties there speaking, a 50+1 is not good enough. Well, are we promoting democracy or not? 50+1, as far as I'm concerned, is good enough. So as far as a border poll goes, that's ultimately a decision for the Irish to make. I would like to see it sooner rather than later. I would like to see it at a time. I think that people who are talking about 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, got to remember, I mean, we are 25 years beyond Good Friday. And there was at the time the belief that perhaps things would be sorted by then. So putting another 50 years onto an already onto an issue that already, as far as I'm concerned, is decided, and we'll see what happens afterwards. It's just kind of kicking the can down the road. It's just kind of dragging their feet. My view, once again, of Ireland's future and whatever role we can play would be to keep it up in everybody's in front of everybody, while all of this other dysfunction is going on. This might be the opportunity to really move forward with this in a significant way by appealing to people with beyond our tradition, appealing to the youth, letting them understand everybody's welcome. You
Right.
turn around and not fair play. We do not intend in a united Ireland. And this is the big fear. And it's the big fear anytime anybody has been in a dominant situation in a society. My understanding is that there's no intention on having somehow to change, to switch it over so that now we're on top and you're going to have to. No, everybody's going to be.
Can I put something to you? The influence of
Pat.
America is absolutely it's beyond maybe more than you would think. Hume claimed that when he started out in politics, that he looked around and said, right, we've had 800 years of Ireland trying to take on Britain, hasn't worked. We need somebody from the outside. So he set off and he cultivated the American politicians, and he worked assiduously, and he got right up to Ronnie Reagan, to the extent that apparently when Reagan met Thatcher one time, he said, after they closed the books, and he turned and he said to her, now, what are you going to do for my friend John? Apparently Thatcher was sort of taken aback, the fact that, and politicians could get to the president of America. And fast forward a wee bit to Joe Biden. I'm shortcutting a lot here. He was running down a corridor a couple of weeks before he was elected president, and a guy from the BBC shouted, Mr. Biden, whatever his name was, I'm a reporter from BBC. And he says, well, actually, I'm Irish. So what I'm saying, and then he's made it clear, Biden has made it clear to the British that there'll be no trade deal if there's anybody who starts messing around with the Good Friday Agreement. So America's role in Ireland, and well, you've already mentioned Bill Clinton. What I'm trying to get at is the role you guys in America have is, I would consider, massively, massively important. So how can you use that influence to bring about more change?
Well, that's a great question, and to the degree that I can, we will. I've been to a number of meetings. I've discussed these issues with a number of people. It's good that Biden, as the president of the United States, has such. It's frightening to the other side, I would believe, because he is so adamant about the fact. Like I'm Irish, and he's from Pennsylvania, lives in Delaware, but he's as Irish as they come politically in this country. But what I think a good thing to remember is that the Congressional Caucus as well, Chuck Schumer. Chuck is a Brooklyn guy who has an Irish chief of staff, Irish American chief of staff.
I was about to say that, Brandon.
Totally
Chuck Schumer doesn't strike me as an Irish name.
No, it's not. It's not. But his chief of staff is. But he's very well educated on Irish issues and is totally behind making sure Good Friday stays rock solid, making sure that the British are that there will be no trade deals, nothing going forward if they don't live up to their word as agreed in the international treaty, which is the Good Friday Agreement. So there's a lot of I'll tell you one thing, and I won't get too deep into it, but just kind of show the advocacy we do. There's a fellow who has been here in the country for quite a while, has an American wife, American children, American grandchildren, and he's being threatened with deportation this far down the road, and we being his attorneys, but also the AOH, which he's a division member, and other advocacy groups are pushing all the buttons that we can on every level approaching this election season to make sure that this individual is not forgotten, and that you know, one of the issues that we've always had, you could have a president who may have his heart in the right place when it comes to Ireland and dealing with Irish issues. So, but it's fractious as well, because you have the government, the Republic of Ireland government might be presenting things in one way. Advocates for the rights of the people in the 6 counties be presenting it another way, and so it gets a little fractious in having to understand what's going on. So basically, where the Americans come from, as far as Ireland goes, is that Ireland needs to be reunited. If you are evolving into a multicultural system, that's how a lot of people, and they don't quite understand Irish America. And to our, you know, as I mentioned before, sometimes it's because of the clownishness that can attend to it, but it's also because they don't understand how we can maintain that tie. And it's part of being what defines us. It's part of one of the joys of being in a multicultural society. Everybody has to work collaboratively to make things work, to move things forward, and not be so locked down into identity politics that you do it to the exclusion of everybody else. Mm-hmm. But we call ourselves Irish or Irish American because we come from that tradition. We were raised in it, and we've maintained it. And frankly, you know, during the 70s and 80s and the Conor Cruz O'Brien, we did not have a Section 31 that denied us the opportunity to really get an understanding of what was going on over the last 50 years in Ireland. So when people say, well, the Yanks romanticized the Yanks, they're plastic patties, the Yanks, it's like, you don't quite understand our community. Yeah, I'm not an Irishman, I'm an American. Yeah. But I have an Irish tradition.
I was one of the most impressive evenings that I've had in the States was that one where you were hosting it in the American Irish Historical Society. Massive, beautiful building right on the edge of Central Park. And I mean, the amount of stuff in there of historical value was an eye-opener for me. And it would be an eye-opener for those who talk about Americans having a simplified view of Irish history. Is that, did I hear somewhere that there was questions about the continued existence of that fine building on the edge of Central Park?
Not so much the continued existence, it's what form it's going to take. And thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I was the chair of the American Irish Historical Society. It's 125 years old, and its mission is that the world should know. What the world should know is the contribution that the Irish made to as part of the American story, and how important they were through the years, up to and including now, as more people join us. What happened with that, pardon me, with that organization, was that it was under kind of it was locked down by this one controlling interest. Myself and others got in there. We tried to make change. We tried to open up the organization, as you saw with your book. It was a wonderful night. Make change, open it up, allow people who had been historically excluded. It was kind of ironic that while we have Clan na Gael and Pierce documentation, Devoy, all of these documents there. We have a proclamation, one of the original proclamations on display, Theobald Wolftone's death mask, just an incredible treasure trove of artifacts and documents that I feel are held in trust. Any institution like that holds it in trust for the Irish people. They're, over the course of years, the controlling interest kind of started feeling that they had a proprietary interest. And so I did some investigating, and I found some issues that needed to be made public and brought to the attention of the New York State Attorney General's office. They are still investigating it, and so we're looking forward to a change in the governance, fiscal accountability. But in my particular concern is the integrity of the collection as well.
Mhm.
That'll be coming forward soon. In the midst of all of that, they did try to sell that building.
I was going to say that. I
Yeah.
I read somewhere that there was a possibility of that building being sold.
No, we're stopping there. We will.
It almost
we
seemed to
wouldn't.
me profanity to do that, even think about it.
It would be, and it was one thing that got actually the Irish consulate here, to their credit, that has been on board with publicly standing against the sale of that building. The people who own it are looking at it strictly from the people who control it, that I've been in contention with for 3 years now. We are anticipating a public announcement from the New York Attorney General's office very soon. But their feeling was that they owned the place. And so as owning it, this is not the idea of selling the building. It was not something that was relatively recent. I heard 6 years or so ago that, yeah, maybe we should sell a building and then just put the money in escrow. I'm like, you don't understand the importance of that building itself as a symbolizing. There was a time when our crowd, the only time they would be at 991 Fifth Avenue would have been to sweep the stairs and to polish the carpentry in there.
Yeah.
It's a symbol to us and to other people who come here and strive of the success that can be made. It's not a finer building on Fifth Avenue,
Yeah.
directly across the street from Metropolitan Museum of Art, Central Park. And that in and of itself, that iconic image, is something that just can't be allowed to
Brian,
be
can I ask you a question?
monetized.
You'll have to be our last, Pat. We're getting very close
Yeah.
to the time.
Brian, have you ever come across sort of opposition to who the hell do you think you are? You're an American coming here. Do you find that in Ireland more than you would have found it in America?
Actually, I know that sentiment exists, but I must say, nobody's ever confronted me face to face about it.
Why am I not surprised, Brian?
I know that that sentiment exists.
By the way, Jude told me I were only 3 minutes. Can I put it to you? And I'm putting this on the record before we finish up. Brian, see the day someone comes along. I've listened to you now for the best part of 40 minutes or thereabouts anyway. If any British, Irish, or American comes and says you don't understand the nuances, by God, they've got it wrong. But you know, there's a frequent throwing out that the Americans romanticize and don't understand Irish history.
Yeah, 19th century, 19th century Celtic twilight.
Yeah, I get this from, I heard from a lot of particularly pro-British type people who say Americans took a jaundiced view. I am of the conclusion that the Brits are the people that need educating when it comes to Ireland, not the Americans. And that's my rant for the day. Jude, over to you.
Okay. Listen, as much as I'd like to talk to you further, Brian, I think we're going to run out of time. So I want to bring this to a graceful stop. Thank you very much for giving us your time, Brian. I'm so sorry that I cut into it in the sense that I was 10 minutes late, but you have to take my age into account.
Oh, please, you can't suck it. See, that's the
and
issue.
my mental
Pat, that's the issue.
instability.
Just in closing, and here's what happens. Remember Jerry Adams when he first came over in 1994? One of the things that he said, and this was in the wake of him having Stephen Ray voice him and trying to keep.
Yeah.
The point was, it's not because they were afraid of me that they needed to try to marginalize and minimize my voice. It's because they're afraid of you. And so the best way, knowing that this is, particularly the people who take action, it is a community, a broad community with political power and will, that is educated about the issues and does not romanticize. I don't romanticize violence. I've seen too much of it in my life. I don't at all. We need to put that in the past. But the point is that when you are dealing with somebody who is counter to your controlled narrative, the only way to deal with them, if they are educated about it, is to marginalize them and to silence their voice by saying they're not even worth listening to because they don't understand this.
Yeah.
Okay, Brian.
So
listen, we're gonna. I don't want to.
Thanks very much, man.
All the best. A pleasure talking to you, Brian.
Brian, thank you very
pleasure,
much.
Pat.
We'll be in
Thanks very
touch
much.
again. Okay.
All right, McCABE.
Anytime
Thank
we
you
can
so
help.
much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye bye.
I'll be in touch. Thank you, Jude. Thanks so much.